to thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank the mayor for being here and for her support, not only of our students, but also of our local history. And thank you all, students, for the time that you took to write these essays and to give some thought to the importance of local history and this incredible city that we live in. A good friend of mine recently moved across the country. She said she had had enough of the winters in Newburyport. And out she went. She moved all the way across the country, bought a house, sold her house here, lasted for 10 months, just showed up back in town. She said, I couldn't stand it and I had to come home. And I think those of us who live in Newburyport and who love it the way that we do and the way that our friends here are learning to love it, really feel that this is home. And it's not only home because it's where we live now, but it also carries all of these incredibly rich lives and stories of the past. So I knew exactly what she meant. So many people have left their mark on this place, and to live here really is home. And of course, one of the great things about living in a town that's gone on for so long is that the city has seen it all. There's really not much you can do here that hasn't been done at some point. It's a rich history of experience. It's just wonderful. So I would like to first of all introduce our judges. I am one of the judges. I'm Bethany Groff, the site manager for Historic New England. And we have two of our other judges here. We have Mike McLaughlin. Do you mind standing up? Mike McLaughlin is the former superintendent of schools for the Pentucket Regional School System, and he was an educator for over 30 years. And Ellie Bailey, who most of you know, is a very recently retired educator from the Newburyport school system, and I have snapped both of these folks up to help give tours at the Spencer Pierce Little Farm. So as soon as teachers retire, you're mine. So thank you all, and I know that they put a lot of time and energy into evaluating these essays, so thank you. We all spent a lot of time doing that, so thank you. I'd like to introduce Mayor Donna Holaday, who served the city and its history well in her 3 terms. She will introduce the students who will read their winning essays, and they will then receive an award from her. So please join me in welcoming Mayor Donna Holaday.
It's my pleasure to be here this morning, and I'm so glad that the Literary Festival has included this essay contest for students. The history of Newburyport is so rich, and as you've heard this morning from 2 great presentations from Glee Woodworth and from the Moats, and we just keep it going. And it's so nice to have the students involved, and I am so pleased to be here to recognize these wonderful students, and I'm sure you will enjoy all of their essays. So without further ado, I would like to first introduce the second prize winner. And this is from grades 6 through 8, Devin Johnson.
I have learned lots about Newburyport. I learned that this is the birthplace of the Coast Guard, and I have learned that the famous abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison was born here. In fact, new Newburyport history was made on March 19th when President Obama mentioned Newburyport in his St. Patrick's Day speech. I think that it is important to know the history of the town that you live in, no matter where that is, because it enriches your understanding and value for where you live. Newburyport in particular has a rich history, including shipbuilding and abolitionists. I feel that I can have more value for the place that I live because of all the amazing things that have happened over the years here. When I was younger, I lived in Byfield. 250 years ago, that area was farmland. When I took walks in the woods, there were stone walls that were used to keep cattle in. Due to the fact that the area was farmland, it had rich and healthy soil, which allowed my mother to make large gardens, which I could play in. We also managed to plant a few blueberry bushes, which flourished in the rich and healthy soil. The woods around us were full of life, and the plants would feed the deer and other animals there. Now I live in Newburyport, and next year I will attend Newburyport High, which is one of the oldest high schools in America, founded in 1831. My life has not just been affected by the history here, it has been shaped by it. A recent study showed that 50% more people live in cities now than they did 100 years ago. If this number continues to rise, in 250 years there will be 125% more people living here than there are now. That would mean about 25,000 people would be living here in 250 years. If this is true, neighborhoods will have more kids in them and children will be drawn to go outside and play with their friends. I lived in a neighborhood on Plum Island with many kids for about a year. In this time, I was drawn to spend more time outside playing with the other kids in the neighborhood than I am now with less kids near me. Thank you.
But it says, the Newburyport Literary Festival logo, the Newburyport Literary Festival Essay Contest citation to Devin Johnson, second prize, 6th to 8th grade, and our 250 logo. Congratulations, Devin. Next, I would like to introduce Hannah Ford.
I stare up at the large metal object standing before me. The glistening sky shimmers around me while my brother is frantically jumping and screaming in excitement because he caught a frog. But all I could think about was the statue. I wondered why it was there and who it was. I was 10 at the time, so I didn't really bother to ask. A couple of years later, I found out that the statue is one of the only 2 statues of George Washington not on a horse. There is so much history and culture in Newburyport, and when I was young, I didn't realize how history could impact our lives. Now that I am older, I realize that history is important. I see it every day and now notice it. Knowing the history of my hometown is important to me. It makes me feel knowledgeable when relatives come in from out of state, and we can tell them about the history of Newburyport. If you are a person that finds history to be boring, then you might be surprised to know that Newburyport's history is very interesting. In social studies this year, we were doing a project all about the history of Newburyport. This project has required a lot of time and effort. This is a long-term project which started in October and finishes in April. Everyone has their own topic, and my topic was on the architectural styles of Newburyport homes. This topic has made me see that not all houses are the same. The Greek Revival houses might look a lot like the Federal-style houses, but they were made in a completely different time period. This project has impacted my life greatly. As I sit here, I wonder what a child living in Newburyport 250 years from now will be doing. They probably won't be affected by the history of Newburyport the same way we are today. I would guess that they wouldn't be learning about the houses from the 1800s, but they would be learning about the houses built today. We can predict that the technology will be more advanced, so the teaching style will be very different. One thing that I can say might happen is one little girl or boy will look up the statue of George Washington and not realize what it is or why it's there. They won't realize the history of this beloved place, but one day they will realize that the history of Newburyport is very important.
Or someone wants to take your picture, so. Congratulations. And next, this is first prize from grade 3 through 5, and Liam Casco? Is that correct? Casco, thank you. Liam?
Newburyport is a small city in northern Massachusetts. It is actually the smallest city in the state. It is a very old city with a really long history. It was established on February 4th, 1764, by Governor Francis Bernard. 47 years later, in 1811, Newburyport suffered a major fire that destroyed most of our beloved city. That's why most of Newburyport is made out of bricks, including every sidewalk. In the 1700s, the famous leader George Washington slept at the great mansion we know today as the Newburyport Public Library. There's more than 1,000 books and CDs. The 5 great public schools we have in the city are almost as old as the city, including the George W. Brown School for preschoolers and kindergartners, the Francis T. Bresnahan Elementary School, the Edward G. Mullen, and the Rupert A. Knock, and the Newburyport High School, the home of the amazing Newburyport Clippers. The city of Newburyport is also birthplace of the United States Coast Guard, which is still an active Coast Guard station. My experience in Newburyport has been amazing. All the shops living on the coast and the great nice people that I've met in my 3 years living in the city have made me love my home. I joined Cub Scouts in 2012. It was incredibly amazing. All the den leaders, the pack meter, and the mayor made me feel like I was at home. The people at Port Media and Newburyport Youth Services are great community helpers. Also, I don't want to forget anyone I've known in Newburyport. I've met so many awesome people. Some of my favorite activities are running the many 5Ks, celebrating Yankee homecoming, being a part of Freedom Boat Club, and boogie boarding off Plum Island. I predict in 250 years, a 9-year-old child will be enjoying the river that separates Newburyport from Amesbury and Salisbury. He or she would be enjoying Mulligan Square shops and celebrating Newburyport's 500th anniversary. Because no matter how many years go by, children will always enjoy everything Newburyport has to offer.
Newburyport to know a lot about. How did Newburyport get its waterfront? When was the restaurant The Park Lunch established? What did the downtown look like 200 years ago? All these restaurants, stores, and waterfront have history that is fascinating that you probably didn't even know about. Some people probably would want to know who brought up the idea of a waterfront and how did they get it to build there. They also might want to know when is the waterfront built there, which was in 1740. Some of the people in Newburyport that would like to know a lot about the history of Newburyport on any topic would most likely live in Newburyport. You don't have to live in Newburyport, but most likely you would research on your hometown. Newburyport for some people is where they grew up and would want to know a lot about its history. At the Knock Middle School, we were working on a project called the Port Project. We all have specific topics on Newburyport's history, and I selected the Newburyport Harbor. After doing a lot of research on the harbor, I've learned so much with my partner, Thomas Green. My partner and I worked really hard on this project. Even though we had different sports schedules, we always made some way to be able to work it out. I have learned about shipbuilding, the Merrimack River, who settled harbor, and much more. My dad, Paul Hogg, is the harbor master of Newburyport, Massachusetts. Whenever my dad and I would have nothing to talk about, I would always bring up and we'd always talk about the harbor. We would talk about for 20 minutes just on the harbor and the Merrimack River. This project was not only made my knowledge better on Newburyport, but made me and my dad even closer than we are. I think in 250 years, most of the kids are going to be doing similar things like us today. I think the kids will be shopping at stores, watching the water on the boardwalk, and still going out to the local restaurants. I think that only some of the things are going to change for kids in Newburyport. Some of the things that I think is going to change is the ability of school. I think the schools in Newburyport will be making it a lot more challenging for the kids. The schools will be expecting more from the kids. I think they will be expecting more because in the future there will be more resources for kids to get and get smarter. All they have to do is just do the best they can 100% of the time. Also in the future, I would predict that the teachers will be teaching things earlier than they are, so the kids will be able to learn more about the topic. Like instead of having teaching multiplication in 3rd grade, maybe they'll teach it in 1st grade.
Well done. And next we have Ellen Ross. No? She's not here. Oh, sorry. Olivia Salvatore.
I am the 7th grader at the Rupert A. Knock Middle School found in Newburyport, Massachusetts. I have 4 amazing teachers. Miss Davis, she teaches language arts. Miss Swain, she teaches math. Mr. Reynolds, he teaches science. And Mr. Weber, he teaches social studies. Mr. Weber has passionately inspired me to learn my city's history. My name is Olivia Salvatore, and I am 13 years old. I live with my father, mother, and 3 brothers. I have lived in Newburyport all my life. Knowledge of our small city is important as it impacts our lives. I hope it will always be this way, even in 250 years into the future. Learning the history of our city is important to me, and it should be to you. Learning our history isn't important, but it takes time and passion. Our history is important. Today we see Newburyport as a loving society with a beautiful town, but it wasn't always this way. Years ago, Newburyport was sectioned off to neighborhoods. They had grocers, barbers, neighborhood doctors, auto mechanics, and more, all in these small neighborhoods. You rarely crossed from the south to the north end of town. The south had a reputation of being poor and run down, while the north had seemed as being wealthy and beautiful. Another interesting part to learning Newburyport's history is some of the craziness that went on years ago. Residents like Lord Timothy Dexter created rumors and even faked his own death. Lastly, the artifacts of curiosity found throughout the city. How can you know what they are and know what they mean if you don't seek out the history? Did you know that we have one of the full-length statues of George Washington standing and not on his horse? Searching Newburyport's history is important and interesting. Discover the artifacts and find our treasured past. The history I've learned over the past few years has helped me tremendously. It helped me understand that if the city has not changed, I would not experience the places I do today. Without the development of the city, I wouldn't be able to go downtown or socialize with the friends that I have made across town. If we didn't have our youth sports programs accepting everyone, then kids would be cut and not enjoying the experiences of sports. I would not be able to recognize the artifacts that we have without preservation, education, and other passionate people. An artifact which I have learned to spot are the 3 old horse troughs that are now flower pots. I hope the city of Newburyport will be the same in 250 years. My hopes are that it will not become another city with towering buildings, hotels, people living on the streets. That it will not have polluted air that's released from our cars and factories, not to compete with Boston and New York, but keeping enough small silence and charm. I hope there will be playing on the streets with both kids and adults. My further hopes that our community will work to help one another and value our small New England city as our ancestors have done. I hope you join me in learning more of our history. It's both important and fascinating.
And Julia unfortunately forgot her essay, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask all of you to email me your essays, because I'm going to put them up on the city website, and that way you'll get a chance to read Julia's.
One more round of applause for the students.